It hasn't been a straight line, like, oh, I've decided to do all these things and all of a sudden they happen every single day and I've been doing it for 40 years. No, I've been figuring it out for 40 years.
Welcome back to Trust the Process podcast. I'm excited about my next guest, Daryl Dittmer. His work is rooted in experience, not ideology. Raised in a blue-collar family where work ethic was non-negotiable, he learned early what long days, responsibility, and effort demand. Over the years, he's worked as a farmhand, carpenter, sales professional, business owner, builder, landlord, investor, and consultant, learning firsthand what discipline builds and what avoidance erodes. After decades of personal work, mentorship, and hard-earned lessons, Daryl rebuilt his life by returning to his basics most people overlook: honesty with himself, daily structure, and keeping his word. Having built and exited multiple businesses, he now focuses on teaching, writing, and coaching, passing on what was given to him to people who are tired of drifting and ready to live with more clarity and self-respect. Daryl lives with his wife, Christina, in the mountains of North Georgia, where a quieter life reinforces the same truths he teaches. Daryl, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, obviously, I just kind of read your bio here, but I'd love to hear in your own words, although you wrote those, what exactly it is that you do day to day to help your clients.
It really boils down for me to honesty and promoting honesty with oneself and understanding where a person might be failing themselves. Because in today's world, it's so easy to get hung up on everything, right? That's outside of us. And there's phones and there's, just things to look at, 24/7 news. I mean, it's insane. And social media, whatever. And, bringing ourselves back, and this is one of the things I like to teach, is bringing ourselves back into ourselves. Because everything outside is distraction. And everything inside brings us more into focus, that's where our life is built. Our life is built here, and then it shows up outside.
For your bio, it sounds like you kind of went through some self-discovery at some point, which has kind of led you to these truths. Can you talk a little bit about, what prompted that and what you did throughout the self-discovery process?
Yeah, absolutely. Just as a background, I was born and raised in Michigan, and very blue-collar upbringing. My dad was a mechanic. Nobody in my family had ever graduated from college, anything like that. So it was just, and it was completely cool. I loved it. It was a great way to come up. But it was you got to work, and that's just what you do. And that our whole sort of the way we looked at ourselves and our neighbors and our family was, how hard are people working, and what are they bringing home and what are they doing, to develop their family, that sort of thing. So anyway, that was how I was raised. And I got involved in drinking and drugs at the age of 13. And it was a pretty quick escalation for me. And I won't go into too much detail, but I was, it was something I loved from the get-go, and I wanted to do more of it, and it escalated into, drugs and harder drugs and dealing and lying and cheating and stealing and criminal activity, some petty, some not so petty. Thank God we don't have phones back then. Anyway, that was just life, but it got bad, and the worst part of it was that I absolutely lost my own soul. And I was not the person that I was raised to be. And it came to a culmination at it was actually December 31st of 1984, and I was at a New Year's Eve party, and I was around, 100 people, a couple hundred people, however many it was, I don't remember, but and it was friends, it was all people I knew for the most part, but I was the most lonely I'd ever been in my life, and the most depressed, and the most just messed up in here. And I thought about killing myself. And that was where I hit my bottom. And 3 days later, I was in a drug and alcohol treatment program, and I've made a conscious effort to build my life ever since that time. However poorly I did it back in the day, learning how to be in recovery, learning how to just live. I mean, I was 19 years old at the time, so I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to be sober. I didn't know how to get away from my friends. I didn't know how to do anything. And it's been a maturation process and a discovery process and an exploration process since that time, and a doing process. It's not about the ideologies, it's about the doing. And that's what I've been engaged in since that time.
Gotcha. So any specific frameworks or anything that you tap into to help your clients, the people you coach?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I espouse. One of the things that I think is crucially important, and I had to do it myself, and I speak 100% from experience. I was told a long time ago by a mentor, if you don't have a thorough understanding, just shut the hell up. Don't talk about it. And that was great advice for me. So one of the things that I needed to do was take a look at my belief system. Take a look at what do I believe and how is that either helping me or thwarting my growth. And we're all handed this box of stuff, I think, when we're kids, like, here you go, man. This is what you're allowed to believe. And you go outside those boundaries of what you're allowed to believe, and you might get in trouble. You might even go to hell, those kinds of things. So I'm carrying around these religious beliefs and these, like manners and all the things I had to do, and they're in this little box, and that, I'm not saying it was bad stuff. I'm just saying it was things that I needed to look at and to investigate. And so that's one of the things that I do with my clients and the people that I coach and mentor is I try to get them to understand that their life is outside of that box, or can be outside of that box, and they can believe larger things about themselves and their lives, and where they can go outside themselves, but also where can they go inside themselves and develop things like that I never knew existed, like, oh, I don't know, peace of mind. Is that a thing? Peace of heart. Some sense of calm, some sense of fulfillment and contentment. And so that's really how I would, begin with somebody, or part of the beginning is let's look at what you believe, and let's look at how we can maybe expand that. And I think that's crucial.
Yeah, I think we have some similar backgrounds and been on a similar journey. I'm from the Midwest. I live in the DC metro area now. I grew up in Decatur, Illinois, farm factory town, right? I think when I grew up, it was 75,000 people, now 55,000 people. But grew up in a Southern Baptist home, just upbringing as well. Again, I kind of view it as you, like, not that it was bad, but like I different views today. And I got involved in drugs and alcohol in my late teens, early 20s. Didn't really in a treatment facility or anything, but I kind of just, working on things myself. But, I look back at that time and say, look, I discovered who I was during that time. Like, I don't look at it as a negative, but I'm not someone who got to a point at 40 years old, had a life crisis, and fell into drugs and alcohol. Not that we ever want to fall into that, but I did it, in my late teens, early 20s, and still managed to graduate undergrad, graduate law school, etc. Maybe not always the most productive as I could have been. And then, fast forward, when I started my company, I started working with an executive coach. I thought we're going to work on things like business plans and marketing, and what we ended up working on was me. Through working with him, I started meditating daily, started reading daily. A colleague of his, I was like, he had him on his podcast. I was like, I gotta talk to this guy. It was a young, late 20s, early 30s entrepreneur who just personified like living your dreams coming true before they actually do. Just the whole law of attraction world. And like, I gotta tap into this guy. Like, this is what I'm missing in my life. And after a conversation about my background, upbringing, and kind of what I've been through in my life, he's like, Jon, what you need to read is the book The Soul Without Shame. And what it is a deep dive into the superego, why it exists from an evolutionary, psychologically, biological standpoint, and why it no longer serves you today. Why you are confident, secure, and successful, but still have self-doubt, still have limiting beliefs, all of these things. And, it began a journey, I'd say 6 years ago now, where I just started really diving into that world and learning about mindfulness, consciousness, understanding that other people's shit is not my shit. Realizing that, why that negative belief exists and how to calm it down, and, not to stop it necessarily, but just understand it, and which is the beginning of the growth. And it's made all the difference in my life and in my business to be able to let go, live in the moment. There was, some time 2 years ago where I was close to hitting rock bottom financially. And it was really tied up into that, and was considering bankruptcy. That was something I was thinking about daily. And then all of a sudden I was reading a book, and it just hit me. Jon, what you're worried about is the future. You have all the money in the world you need right now. Maybe it would require you to sell some stocks at a 50% loss, tap into your retirement fund, but there's nothing in the world that could happen to you financially right now that you couldn't survive. And so I just started reminding myself that every single day. There's nothing in the world. And that allowed me to climb out of the hole I was in. And of course, little by little, all these things that had happened that caused me to be in this position started opening up. The delayed business idea or program started paying out. The stock started turning around. All of these things started opening up the minute that I changed my mindset, my mind frame of how I was viewing it. And it's made all the difference for me.
I love it, man. I do. And I love the story because it exemplifies, the work that we do in here and how it translates right outside of us. Yeah, that's really cool. It's funny. I was taking a walk with my wife the other day. We walked the dog, every day, like around noon, and we just chat. She's into trading, futures, and turning herself into an absolute badass, which is cool. I love, and anyway, and I'm doing my thing, and we talk about things and struggles sometimes on that walk, and she said, I hope she doesn't mind me saying this. I don't think she will. But she said, sometimes I'll put in a trade and I'll know I need to stop the trade, but I won't do it. And something is keeping me from doing that. And I said, honey, sometimes you got to kick your bully in the teeth. And sometimes you have to say, you know what? I can't separate what I'm doing from me. I can't say I'm doing this because I'm the one doing it. And I have to take full responsibility. And so she and I had that discussion, and she loved it. She said, you know what? You need to title your next book, Sometimes You Need to Kick the Bully in the Teeth. But we can get bullied by ourselves, and it can be under the guise of, oh, well, something inside of me is not allowing me to. No, that's something inside you can do something about because it's you. And that's a really crucial thing. And that's what I heard you saying when you were saying that is you know what, because believe me, I've been broke as hell in this lifetime, and really freaking broke, buying potatoes because that was the cheapest thing I could buy that filled me up. I mean, I'm not a small human being. And but something that helped me through that was like you talked about, and you didn't say the word, but that's I think is what you meant, gratitude. Like, hey, food, clothing, and shelter. That's all that I really need. I need food, clothing, and shelter. And I can build from there. And that was kind of the attitude I took, was like, look, I'll buy this $25 couch at the garage sale that's all ripped to shit because I don't have enough money to afford anything else. But you know what? That'll do. That'll do. I'm not sitting on the floor. And I'm going to check the cushions to see if anybody left change under it because I need gas to get to my next appointment. So those kinds of things are absolutely recoverable. And for me, and it sounds like for you, I've been presented with these really cool things in life that sometimes are in the form of mentors or books or whatever it is. And it's like, as long as I'm trying, and that's always where it boils down to for me, as long as I'm trying, the road just sort of lays out in front of me. If I'm not trying, then I'm in a whole different world of shit because I can't see that road, and I can't, it's not presented to me because I'm not trying. That's how I sort of frame it and believe it. But that was really cool. I loved hearing that story.
So who are your typical clients? Who are you working with? You working business owners, CEOs, everyday people? Who are you working with?
I prefer, and I've definitely have worked with business people, and all over the spectrum, the C-suite folks and whatever, owners, et cetera. But I've also worked with, regular folks without those titles, and I love both. I really do. I want to work with, and I've done work with hundreds of people in recovery over the years, just because I get it, and because I want people in recovery to understand that recovery is building a life. Recovery is not getting rid of the booze and the drugs and whatever else. Recovery is building life. So it runs the gamut in terms of people that I work with, and everybody's got their own uniqueness, which is way cool, because no two stories are the same, which I love. But anyway, that's who I generally have worked with.
Yeah. I mean, on your point, I mean, I think, from my background and what I've kind of learned is getting rid of negative habits is one thing, but replacing that time, money, and energy with something more positive is the part that people often miss, is that you have to throw yourself into something else. Whether that's religion. For me, it was lifting. Like when I decided like I was going to stop doing stuff daily, like I dove into lifting, and it's probably become its own addiction. I lift when I'm sore, and I probably shouldn't lift, right? But I mean, it's not a horrible addiction to have. I work out too much, right? But it's like I threw myself into that, and that's replacing that energy with something more positive. I'm also someone who works a lot. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't work 9 to 5. If I have, I tend to bank my hours on Monday and Tuesdays, working 12-hour days because I don't have my son, and that way I can make sure I'm a little more available in the evenings when I do have him. So that's certainly something I have come to understand. I know you just said that your clients come to you from different ways, different perspectives. You help them in different ways. But are there if you could categorize like 3 of the biggest things that you see, especially with business owners, entrepreneurs that are getting their way, do you have a smaller list of things you tend to see over and over again?
Yeah, and the funny part is I've done them all. I've made every freaking mistake in the book, and which is cool. I don't begrudge any of it. I there's not a part of my life that I regret, because everything that it's taken to get me where I'm at. And that's completely cool. If one thing had changed, maybe I wouldn't be here, and waking up in the morning with a smile on my face. So drifting, I think, is the biggest thing drifting from ourselves. When I talk to people, they, you know, they're, it's easy to think when we're young, like, okay, the culmination is having the house or the houses and the cars and the stuff. And then you get the stuff and you're like, oh man, I'm not fulfilled. My life still kind of sucks, even though I've gotten all this stuff. And I was there when I was in my 20s. And what happened is you drift away from the things that make life meaningful. And maybe I set aside the importance of a relationship or the importance of exercise or the importance of eating right or, whatever it is, or the importance of going to the gym and exercising, and I think that's a big one because we can really fall apart when we're not paying attention to those things. And I see that, a pretty fair amount. I think the other thing is there's such an insistence upon making money. And I'll tell a couple of, one little story about two people, but it's the same story.
Let's hear it.
A couple of partners that I had worked with over the course of time, before we started making money, they were like, you know what? All I really want in this life is financial security. Just financial security. I just want to be able to do what I want when I want, not have to worry about money, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, absolutely, me too. That's all I want. I didn't come from money, so I'm like, money be cool. Just, yeah, I'll take some. But I don't need so much, that I don't know what the hell to do with it all. And they said that same thing. And then as we started making money, they just kept going and going and going and going. And I'm like, I understand, but that's not what you said, and it's so easy to get hung up on more and more and more. And that can be a problem because, again, it shucks away everything else that's important in life and puts those things under money in many instances. And so I see a lot of that. And for myself, I was fortunate to be able to make decisions about my life. When I was 48, I stopped chasing money. And not that I'm not still making it, I still make it. I'm just not chasing it. And it's a pretty cool place to be. And that's one of the things that I think I can say to people, and I do say to people, like, how much is enough? How much do you need? I don't feel like, and this is my personal belief, I have two sons, and they're both successful on their own. And, and it wasn't like, gimme. It was go do it, dude. Just like I grew up. And they've, they're working toward more success in their lives. And I don't feel like, and again, this is just me, I don't feel like handing them a pile of money, even when I die, is the right thing to do. I just don't. And so I'm going to figure out something to do with it. And I tell them jokingly, but not really, like, you guys got to figure out how to split $12 when your mom and I, spend it all. So, and I think, those things, I hope that answered the question. I know I kind of went roundabout on it, but anyway, those are a couple examples.
Yeah. I mean, look, again, when I started working that executive coach 6 years ago, whatever it was, if my world domination plan, something he would have me create, it was a great document spreadsheet that, included finances, business, personal relationship, my spiritual journey, my mindfulness journey, mapping all my goals and ambitions are that year, the next 2-3 years. And if you when I put in what I wanted that first year, my goal, my dream goal, like I've surpassed that. Like we always have these goals and dreams, and we think if we hit that, our life is set. Then we hit that, then we also realize things like how much gets taken off our taxes, how much I have to invest in other places to reduce my taxes, which reduces the cash you have. And in entrepreneurial life for me, it's kind of been ebb and flows. It'll be really, really good one year, moderate the next, and it's hard to keep that flow going. And but I was, for the longest time, I was chasing an imaginary number. Like, I couldn't tell you what number it was that would get me to stop chasing, but I was still chasing it. If I would have hit it, I would have kept going. And one thing I have learned through my spiritual journey and my mindfulness journey is you have the goals, you have the vision, but not the attachment to the outcome. Have your goals, have your ambitions, do it from a place of serving other people, which I would define my purpose as using my skills, strengths, experience, and abilities to help other organizations and leaders grow. That's what I want to do. And I've learned to kind of let go of what that means monetarily. Again, I still have budgets and goals and what I'm trying to do, but I focus on what I'm delivering for other people, the impact I can have by doing this work, as opposed to that monetary figure.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's very cool. My definition of success used to be, I want to be a gazillionaire and retire at, when I'm whatever. And it's like, and then since then I've learned it's okay to be a whatever heir, that, whatever anyone becomes at any point in time, but be conscious enough to understand, maybe there's some other really cool stuff out there to focus on and to do and to put my time into. And I'm the same way. My definition of success changed from that sort of mindset to waking up in the morning with a smile on my face. And what does that entail? That entails treating my body right, my mind right, my heart right, and my soul right. And doing the things that help me in those areas and provide the most, quote unquote, health in those areas. And so that's how things have changed for me, which is really cool, because then, just like you said, Jon, now I can focus on something outside of me, which is, for me, and it sounds like for you, other people. How can I help other people be successful? And that's a pretty cool place to be, when I don't have to just think about what do I have to do to make myself, it becomes so much larger than being about me, which is a really cool thing.
So what are some of those daily routines that you put in your life to help you be healthy in all those areas?
So similar to what you were saying, I meditate every day. I have a breathwork practice that I do every day. I practice gratitude every day, and which is really just, it's gotten down to the point where I just say, thanks. I'm just happy to be here, for whatever that entails. And I intermittent fast. I had become sick once in business, and, an autoimmune thing that was fairly significant. And so I part of me expanding my stuff was I had to change my diet completely and change what I was doing with myself. And that autoimmune disorder is gone. It's gone. And asymptomatic, and has been for a long, long time. So if I had a sponsor or a mentor tell me one time, he said, Daryl, first things first, and the rest will be added on. And it sounds biblical, but it's not. It is, again, treating my body, mind, heart, and soul correctly, and what does that entail? And if I do that, and if I do those things and those practices, everything else works out. It really, really and truly does, and I've seen that happen over decades in my life. And I also have shown myself because obviously we're not perfect. I'm certainly not. And it hasn't been a straight line, like, oh, I've decided to do all these things and all of a sudden they happen every single day and I've been doing it for 40 years. No, I've been figuring it out for 40 years. But consistently for the most part. But I know that when I let something go that I know is good for me because, oh, I have to do this or that or whatever, I feel it. And it can detract from waking up in the morning with a smile on my face. So anyway, the consistency of those practices is absolutely crucial.
I'm curious what you do for your daily breath work. As someone who's kind of been through the spiritual meditation journey, a coach I'm seeing right now is kind of more on the spiritual. She calls herself the yogi corporate, and she's encouraged me to do some in-person yoga with. This is not like your soccer mom studio. This is like in like a spiritual commune with people who live in an 18-bedroom house.
Wow.
Right. And like the women are in kind of traditional Buddhist garb and everything. And look, I'm a 245-pound power lifter and hockey player. Yoga is not my strong suit at all. Right. I can touch my toes because that's the one area I stretch my hamstrings after tearing my hamstring playing hockey, and kept re-injuring it. But working with her, I was like, I didn't want to just jump into a class there. I wanted to do one-on-one instruction because I knew I was coming into this without a lot of knowledge and experience. And, after the second time, she's like, we definitely need to keep these one-on-one sessions for a while. And what she was focusing on that was a deficiency in me was my breathing. And, meditating, everything I try to do, belly breathing and all that type of stuff. But like being there in front of an expert who's been doing this for 40 years, like I clearly had some deficiencies. And I know this, some of the listeners that may not be involved in this world at all, breathing is so important. And I challenge you, like if you're next time you're struggling with something's in your head, negative thoughts, worry, fear, whatever it is, just literally take a second, breathe in your nose, try to breathe it through your entire body, feel that breath in your entire body. That bad thought is going to go away, right? That is why breathing and meditation are so important. So I'd love to hear what your breathing practice is on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's a practice called pranayama, which has its roots in India, and it's actually, if I can just, a friend of mine taught it to me, and he's an Indian dude named Amit. He's a great guy. He's a doctor up in Boston, and he kind of married the scientific with the traditional practice because he's a pulmonary doctor, and so he's got a website. It's called Breathonance, Breathonance.com, and it's a practice that it involves a little bit of movement, but different types of breath, different types of breathing, and really what it does for me, and you mentioned it, you said, once you breathe like that and pay attention to it, it's gone, right? The issue or whatever it was. And that's absolutely true because it brings me into the moment. It brings me into the now. And the most wonderful thing about it is it helped me calm significantly before I entered my meditation practice. And so the meditation was that much more profound and deep and resonant if I do the breathing practice before the meditation. So pranayama is a big one. And sometimes if I don't have time, I do just what's called a ujjayi breath, which is, excuse me, and the yogis will tell you, the mouth is for eating and talking, and the nose is for breathing. So in through my nose, out through my mouth, constricting my throat just a little bit on the in breath and the out breath. Normally about a 5-second in, 5-second out routine through my belly and not drawing it up, but pushing it out. And that's sort of an instantaneous, even if have a crazed day and I have to get up at 4 in the morning and I've got to leave at 6 or whatever, I can take 5 minutes and do some ujjayi breath, and it absolutely resonates through the entirety of the day.
Yeah. Some of my practices that I've been putting in there is breathing. Focus on breathing through all parts of my body. Right, start with your feet, into your legs, into your hips, stomach, arms, and just do that, as well as something more recent is breathing through my chakras. And again, you are way more versed in this than I am. I couldn't name all the chakras. I roughly know what they all are and where they're located, but just taking the time to feel my breath going through each of those, it really does have this calming effect.
That's really cool. One thing that I do sometimes, and I do the whole body breathing where I feel my whole body expand, which is really cool. But sometimes I breathe through right here, and I allow myself to feel that, the pineal gland, the third eye, that sort of thing, and just a way of to me, it's just a different way, and there's nothing woo-woo about it. It's just a way to experience breath in a different way and bring ourselves back into the moment. It's not crazy, mystical. But the cool thing is it resonates. It resonates through the entirety of the day or the entirety of life. And that's probably the most profound benefit is I can go out and be calm in the midst of a lot of crazy shit. And it's because of that. I'm absolutely convinced, because I can be a maniac too. I mean, there's no doubt at all I can do that. I can be I can go and go and go and go and go. But having a balance in how much I have to exert versus how much I can allow myself to be, that's a great balance to have, I think.
Yeah. And you talk about, this isn't woo woo, for any listeners who have not explored this at all, like a lot of this stuff is actually like from Buddhist, Taoist traditions to quantum physics today. Science actually backs all this up. How we all are energy. I mean, I've read books where it talks about, the CIA actually studying clairvoyance and like it being a real thing with people, and biological studies where they actually separated DNA from a human being, and the DNA miles away had a reaction when the human being had an emotion, right? Like crazy things. Do I understand all the nuance and science and spirituality behind all this? Absolutely not. But it just goes to show that, what we saw as whether you're talking about Native Americans, Buddhists, whatever, that it's being rooted in science now and being backed up by it. And it's just really, really cool. Just bringing this back real quick to kind of, leadership and who we help. My background has been in operations and helping people create efficient, effective operations. But the more and more I have not expanded, but just dove into how I actually help my clients, it's become a combination of operations, culture, and leadership, the mindset of the leadership. And one thing I've really discovered that I have to spend a lot of time and effort on is learning to, or helping the CEOs and founders learning to let go. Let go of two areas, ego and control. And like, because whenever I am trying to get them to create new processes, create new procedures they can trust, so they don't micromanage, they don't have to be a part of everything, they can step out of the business, not work 20 hours a day, all those things, it always comes down to ego and control. And that's the hardest part of my job, is letting them see that and getting them to release that. Is that something you work with a lot with your clients as well, or see a lot?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple things right at the beginning that I talk to my clients about. One is humility, which is being teachable, another word for being teachable. And the other is surrender to something larger, whether it's a better idea or a different way of looking at things, because belief systems can be in that box, right? And like, oh, I can't get out of that box. And look, I'm not a young dude, and so I have stuff that I'm like, you know what? That's the only way to do it. And maybe it's not. And I have to constantly remind myself that there's a lot of people on this planet that know a hell of a lot more than I do about a heck of a lot of things, and I need to be open to differing ideas and to expanding what I believe, and so that surrender. And it sounds like, oh, that's too much, surrender, like that, losing that element of control. But surrender is when the gates open, and humility, the teachability, is when the gates open, to differing belief systems and something else, something different, something larger, something better. Absolutely. That's probably the most, I don't want to say the most difficult thing, but you can see when the light bulbs go off. You're like, oh man, that dude's starting to get it now, and starting to move forward in that letting go process. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I was working with a young founder in the last year, and there was something wrong with his business. We knew it was wrong. Like it just, there was no question. We all knew it was wrong. And it took me 3 months, probably 5 memos, probably 12 conversations over these 3 months to convince him to change it. Right? Because he was so stuck on some little aspects of what I was pitching, and afraid of change, and afraid of things being outside of his vision and control, that it literally took 3 months and all that work on my part to convince him to change something he already knew was wrong and not working.
Mm-hmm. That's tough. Yeah, that's tough. But when that light bulb went off, right, that had to be just a beautiful moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wrote the book, The Curious Leader, and when I do workshops, one of the exercises I do for executives is have them solve a problem by only asking questions. Because it goes to what you're talking about, right? That humility of not having to know all the answers and not solving every problem with our minds, but tapping into. So I have the team get into a circle, and they go around one by one asking a question, and eventually you just see the lights go off in their eyes, like the light bulb go off, right? Like someone literally pinpointed the solution to their problem by asking the right question, and they did it together, tapping into that. And so those are some of the things that I bring out in people to help them kind of learn to let go, let the ego down, trust your team, trust the process. But look, we're coming up in here on almost 45 minutes, way longer than I thought. We really just, been a great conversation. I could talk about, the mindfulness aspects and how it applies to our daily lives and leadership all day long. So many times I want to talk about like what I'm teaching my son about all this that I didn't learn when I was a kid, that I was, learning this at 38, 40 years, and another aspect you mentioned was, something I always say is like, I don't bat 1,000, right? We're both working on our stuff. And, something that coach I talked about earlier mentions is, coaches, we're all just shoveling our own shit, right? We're teaching our clients to work through the things that we have been through and work through. Like, we're not perfect. We're not the best at everything. But we put in the work. We did the internal work to make ourselves better, to make our businesses better, that sort of thing. And so, Daryl, I want to thank you tremendously for this show. I know a lot of people probably try to focus more on the operation and leadership stuff, but truly, in my opinion, there's no greater way to solve your leadership and operation problems than doing the inner work that you need to do yourself. So I'm gonna leave it to you to give the audience one last kind of piece of advice that can truly help them in doing this inner work.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Jon. It's been a riot, man. I've enjoyed our discussion very, very much. I think when it comes to change, and this is very important because I've been very guilty of it. And again, I only like to speak from experience, but when we think about change, sometimes we think, oh, I have to change 14,000 things all at once. And you'll never have to change 14,000 things. The only thing you have to change at this moment is one thing, and implement one thing. And that might be That might be a business thing, that might be a personal thing, but maybe it's, you know what? I'm going to look up what that dude Daryl was talking about, that Ujjayi breath, and I'm going to do 5 minutes of that a day. And I'm going to see what happens over the course of 30 days. And does that change me? So start with one small thing and open up to the possibility that there is something so much larger than you can currently imagine available for you. And it's not all out there. Much of it's in here. And that's where the exploration, I believe, needs to happen and certainly needs to start.
Daryl, I couldn't agree with you more, and that's great advice to end on. We're obviously going to put your information in the show notes, but if you would, tell everyone how to get in touch with you.
Sure. The best place to find me is my website, which is Daryl Dittmer, DarylDittmer.com. And my website's getting transitioned right now to some new stuff. So hopefully you catch some information there that makes sense. But you can always email me, anybody who has a question, or, I'm happy to help anyone. I don't need to get paid for it. Ask me a question, whatever. I'd be happy to help. And you can catch me at Daryl@DarylDittmer.com. Shoot me an email, and I'm happy to answer any question or help any way I can.
Well, Daryl, thank you for being part of the show. I'll end this with one more thought, which is, other thing that we're talking about today. I truly believe it has to be the part of the process for every leader to be able to trust the process. Doing the inner work, having the humility, letting go of ego, being able to accept change in our lives and in our business are crucial for us to be able to trust the process. So we will end it there. Daryl, thank you for being on the show, and everyone stay tuned to the next episode.